With Carlton sitting outside of the top 8 on Sunday afternoon, there was no other option aside from winning against the Eagles in Perth. With a heavy shifting of magnets, a largely improved application around the ground, and youngsters which contributed to a rejuvenated version of the Blues, Carlton completed the exact mission they were set to do. Today, due to popular demand, you lot wanted to see me take a look at the games of those playing their first game. Ashton Moir, Cooper Lord, and in his starting 22 debut, Jaxon Binns. Drop a like on this video if you get what you're after, and subscribe to remain notified next week for what I hope is not the final analysis of the season. Enjoy! For a trio as young as this one, you're expecting a game with limitations. They may do a handful of things really well, needing notable improvement in other areas. But Vossi, as we all know, is all about roles. And so really, as long as you're delivering in what you're good at, that's enough. And anything on top is a bonus. A game against a weaker opposition served as a nice and short apprenticeship to ease into the top level to see how they coped. To analyze their games on the weekend, I thought it would be fun to look back on what was said about these three guys leading up to the draft or when they got drafted. Also take a peek into what they were delivering at VFL level and see how well this lined up with what they produced on Sunday. Let's start with Ashton Moir. Watching his pre-draft highlights, the overhead mark is the most notable attribute of his. And that ties in well with the lead-up marking attribute that was associated with Fox's review of him on draft night. At VFL level, he did throw his weight around a fair bit. And then as per the AFL.com.au review, his vertical leap is strong. His game combines flair with physicality, and he is a smart finisher around goal. On Sunday, what was teased in the years prior to suiting up in the AFL was on display. The lead-up marking and quality aerially was on display. The flair around goals and being a smart finisher, that was too. The physicality element, the same. All in one quarter of footy. Definitely gives you a bit of excitement for what his best games of footy could entail. Next up is Jaxon Binns, and I found his performance quite interesting because he started the game very slowly from a statistical perspective and then got more touches in the second half than Paddy Cripps, attached with a goal in a far more comfortable showing. In his draft clip, dubbed a specialist wingman with elite endurance, this is what was said.
His work between the arcs is absolutely elite. We've heard the talk around the place, he's very outside and we know he covers the ground. I love that. I think if you look at the likes of Brad Hill, they're players that have got the ability to change the course of a game.
Which is certainly done at VFL level. His ground coverage is something you see more at VFL level with his defensive work. But much like Moyer's draft coverage, the number one tick on that list is exactly what we saw on the weekend. Binns is an accumulator, and his second half accumulation consisted of hard work and remaining disciplined as an outside player, with only 3 possessions all game coming from contested footy. In VFL level, you see that discipline a ton as well. Even though Binns delivered straight donuts for stats in the first quarter, he had a range of moments where he did his role to the team's benefit. On this example, as opposed to running out wide to the flank and taking up space for that first kick on the back 50 exit, dragging his man out, Binns, amongst others, remain central. So it becomes a matter of someone getting out there and running with the grain of the kick to get the ball moving quickly. Really smart stuff, whoever decided on that one, as the ball gets inside our forward 50 with 2 kicks. On this example, the presence of Binns sells that hand pass to the Eagle, challenging Hollands, and forces him to commit to blocking that passing lane. Only, it allows Hollands to remove that threat and create the space to deliver a precise pass to Zach Williams on a back 50 exit. For Carlton's first goal, Jaxon Binns has a fair part to play in this. He starts on the attacking side of the stoppage, which is an interesting placement. Of course though, this means that if West Coast attack through the back of the stoppage and try to access the corridor, Binns is thereabouts alongside Zach Williams. In this example, that's where West Coast end up, and Binns works well with Zach Williams to corner Harley Reid. Reid is pressured and overcooks a handball on the non-dominant side, and if we accelerate forward, I don't think it has an astronomical bearing on the outcome, but given the placement of players, obviously the outskirts of this contest is gonna be where you're afforded the most time. And if Binns as a winger can eliminate his man, that works wonders. If we pause just where Durden loses the ball, you can see a 3-on-2 forming at the front right of the stoppage. Johnston would have to commit anyway to stop the kick, but the Binns shepherd prevents a rundown tackle or at least a challenge by Duggan that could affect this hand pass over the top and bring Johnston back into the contest. It's the thought that counts, and shepherds don't happen nearly as often as they should. In this second quarter example, you see the width that Binns holds, akin to that of his play in the VFL. Pitto smacks one into the corridor, and you can see a number of Blues corridor side, and eventually running with the grain of the switch as it reaches Zach Williams. Hypothetically, if Williams felt rushed or lacking time, or honestly, if it just wasn't Zach Williams who had the ball, given he's possessed with the rare capability to do this, there's 3 Blues to handball to, which with such a run would be able to feed Binns all by himself out wide. He'd have that opportunity to take it in himself and have a shot at goal on the run, or lay off a pass inside 50. You'll see something fairly similar out of this contest, and a sublime pickup over a kick that only has uncertainty attached to it means the overlap is allowed to occur and be utilized. And so with that time and space that Waitering now possesses, he's able to honor a run by Sam Walsh into the open side and actually hit that target. Binns still has plenty to develop. 7 turnovers and 56% disposal efficiency scream poor kicking, but you did see some hits with the misses. He looked vulnerable physically early, but like the other aspects of his game, that vulnerability subsided as the game wore on. I think the added bonus of Jaxon Binns holding things up from his end was that Ollie Hollands could be injected into a surprisingly productive role off of halfback, which almost felt like the best game of his young career. Funnily enough, it probably delivered Jaxon Binns his first AFL goal as well. Definitely a similar vibe to earlier in the year, where Lachie Cowan's production allows Alex Chincotta into a prosperous tagging role. Much like the other 2022 draftees, Cowan was excellent, but that'll be a discussion for another day. Now to cap this one off, Cooper Lord. The thing that struck me about him on the weekend was his fearlessness and willingness to place his body in harm's way, especially in defense. Bigger bodies made him earn the footy or held him accountable, but he tackled or took on the hit and as a result looked comfortable at AFL level. In the AFL's write-up, Lord was praised for this cleanliness at ground level and defensive work, and Riley Beveridge in the draft coverage says this about him.
Carlton have targeted endurance runners over the last couple of years. It continues Carlton's trend of bringing in running depth and outside running depth, so just another good pickup for Carlton there.
At VFL level, you certainly see his follow-up work being more profound after disposing, but that endurance that Beveridge refers to doesn't necessarily need to relate to long-distance running and racking up possessions contest to contest. Footy is taxing, and so Lord's reputation as a tackler that loves physicality ties in well with the endurance side of the game. I think this is shown at VFL level and in a very short 1-game sample at AFL level as well. Back to the example that was comprised of a switch involving Binns. The key thing that kickstarts it all is Cooper Lord practically hanging off Tim Kelly, and Carlton are the only ones with clean possession from that moment onwards, all the way until it ends in a minor score for the Blues, even though there's a fair amount of luck attached. His clean hand hands with the footy for me was an attribute that I enjoyed seeing on display, in examples such as these. The Eagles try and attack the corridor, but right into traffic, and off the back of a fumble, Lord quickly collects, sidesteps, and fires out the handball, which until the handball part did not resemble that of a first gamer in the league. This is the most impressive one for me, involving both clean hands and that follow-up work we've talked about him showing in the VFL. He traps the unpredictable bounce of the ball well and makes himself difficult to tackle all in one pirouette motion. Does well to hold the ball firmly as he brings it down to release the handball. Then he relocates into a central area for an attacking move. His presence is damaging because as an extra man, Eagles numbers have to roll up to more Blues, and Walsh draws Owies' man as Owies pushes back. His lead up not required. Simultaneously, it opens up the space for Carroll, who can continue the chain, and Carlton's handball chain is far more prolonged as a result. McGovern is now split between two, committing to the shorter option, and the distance gained by the Blues allows McGovern to be lobbed. Assistance can't be provided, with Durden wanting a kick to the side further away from Kemp, and those two players are well separated. The prompt ball movement creates this dynamic, and Cooper Lord's ability to first extract and then provide an option in the middle for a quicker attacking move helps this outcome. In this example, Lord simply existing helps Carlton's clearance to pile on another third quarter goal. Lord is front of stoppage, so when Carlton attack from the back of stoppage and Cripps overcomes a triple team, all Lord's got to do is keep running forward and maintain the distance to Hewitt. Yeo creates a free man over the top if he attacks Hewitt, so if he remains attached to Lord and Lord keeps running forward, Lord's basically escorting Hewitt forward, affording him that space where he feels unaffected. Cripps makes this dynamic occur, but it's up to the others to keep that advantage strong, and Lord does well to do that. The kick to about 75 out due to this ease of play allows an entry to the hotspot, exactly where you want it, because it's quite difficult to punch the ball across the line from this distance. Ultimately, the soft drop out the back brings Smalls into the game, as we see here as Motlop completes the sequence. Did notice as the second half wore on, I don't know if this came down to managing him in his first game or spreading the load amongst a bunch of midfielders, but I did notice Cooper Lord played far more time in the second half forward, with his involvement in the game taking a hit. I think that tells you all you need to know about where his strongest position is. Overall, Carlton couldn't afford any passengers, despite the amount of inexperience plaguing their Sunday team. Those first gamers needed to quickly adjust to AFL level, feed into their strongest attributes, buy into the identity that Carlton were looking to rediscover, and ultimately impact the game. This trio showed elements of promise, resembling their best shown in the lower leagues. I personally feel a lot more at ease with them entering the selection frame for the AFL side sooner rather than later, when the time comes next week or next year. What were your thoughts on these three individuals? Did they live up to, or did they exceed your expectations? What does their playing time look like for the rest of the season? Hope you enjoyed this one. Chat to you next week for what hopefully isn't the final analysis of 2024. Stay safe, have a good one. Bye for now.